My name's Leo and I'm a boat builder and a sailor, and I'm on a mission to rebuild and restore the 1910 classic sailing yacht Tally Ho. Now I'm rebuilding that boat in Washington State, but right now I'm in South Georgia, USA. I'm at Cross Sawmills and I'm going to be helping Steve Cross grade the live oak timber that he's been milling into flitches for Tally Ho's framing stock.
You must be Leo.
Yeah.
Alright, how was the trip?
It was good.
Alright.
Okay, so this is Steve Cross of Cross Sawmills.
Correct. This is Southern live oak, a scientific name Quercus Virginiana, and it's an oak that grows from the Virginia around to Texas. And there's other species of live oak around the world. There's two types in California, and then there's the Mediterranean live oak and possibly other live oaks.
Okay.
But this Southern live oak, we cut the live oak frames for several ships, the San Salvador, HMS Surprise Repair, Ernestina Morrissey Repair, Mahjong Yacht Repair, Malibu Motor Launch. What else?
And Tally Ho.
Yeah, Tally Ho. the thing that makes the carriage go up and down the track, this is a hydraulic motor and a gearbox and a winch assembly. This cable pulls this carriage up and down the track.
Right, okay. And the saw stays still then?
Well, it positions vertical.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
And sideways.
Right. Is that an old forklift truck in there? Something like that?
Yeah, well, it's actually, let's see, 1, 2, 3. There's parts of at least about 5. The engine right there, the black one, that's a 25 horse gas burner that operates the hydraulic system.
Right.
And then there's a 65 horse Perkins diesel right there.
Oh, bloody hell.
That operates the saw.
I love the tractor chair.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch.
Hey, but it's got a 9-valve system on it. You got 2 methods: any, meeny, miny, mo, or you can just grab something and see what happens.
Which method do you prefer?
I just grab something. Maybe we'll get a chance to run it tomorrow or pretty soon.
It's an amazing contraption. You built it yourself. How long did it take?
I don't know.
Okay.
Some pieces that have been on here since the 70s.
Right.
And then some of the pieces are as new as 6 months or a year. I guess we'll go through the stuff we already got and count it, and then we'll mill this one.
Well, here I am in the back of my little pickup truck, and it's alright, it's a bit cold. I am parked right next to a lake. Apparently there's quite a lot of alligators in it, so that's interesting.
And yes, there's alligators out here.
Okay.
3 or 4. Later in the day, it wouldn't surprise me if they won't be out.
Huh.
But a minimum chance they'll eat you.
That's good.
See all those trees?
Yeah.
Live oak. There's probably enough live oak right there, probably to frame a 200-ton ship. But they're awful hard to handle and awful labor intensive. This is the Spooner live oak. Our research shows this is the biggest live oak tree in the world, and which also makes it the biggest living organism east of the Mississippi River. The reason a live oak is called a live oak is because of its evergreen leaves on the tree, and that's the way it'll be 50 weeks out of the year, and then the other 2 weeks it'll be in the pollination and the leaf exchange.
How old would you estimate this tree to be?
Our best guess is probably 400 years.
Right.
But we don't really know. I know Mr. Roger said when he was a boy, 18 years old, which would be over 75 years ago,
yeah,
he said they used to plow with mules, and they would stop and have a break under the shade of the tree.
Yeah.
And he said he couldn't really tell it had grown that much in 75 years.
Wow.
Uh-huh. They say that the extreme lifespan is like 634 foot and 11 inches, which would mean straight through around 11 foot.
Wow.
The survey done by the U.S. Forest Service and the state forestry agencies reflect 1.3 billion live oak in the United States. Within a 100-mile circle of my sawmill, I think there's 130 million. Of course, I have no way of personally counting them.
Of course. So it doesn't seem like there's any shortage of live oaks.
Correct.
Great. Well, that's good news. So these 2 trees behind me are fairly young live oaks, and they will grow to be monsters probably eventually, like the ones we've been looking at. And you can see the distinctive leaves here. And the reason they're called live oaks is because they keep their leaves almost the entire year round, and only just losing them or changing them over for new leaves over a 2-week period once a year. So what we're doing today is grading and measuring all these flitches, which Steve's already cut. He's cut these to just over 2.5 inches, which is the sided dimension of my frames, marking off where there's big shakes or big knots or lots of bark, and taking that off and then making a rough calculation of board feet.
This is a book. It's a historic recounting of the live oak trade, but this is a ditty written probably 1850 or before. One day as I was traveling, I happened to think, my pockets were empty, I can't get a drink. I am an old bummer, completely dead broke, and I've nothing to do but go pounding live oak. I started at once for to see Captain Swift, to see and find out would he give me a lift. He viewed me all over from topping to toe, says he, you're the boy that live oaking must go. Then he drew up the papers which both of us signed, to keep in full field if we both felt inclined. But the very best wages that he could afford was $25 a month and my board. He bade me get ready without more delay, and the schooner set sail on the very next day. We landed on the wharf, some 80 or more, poor miserable wretches being tired of the shore. With 2 pints of whiskey, some tobacco, and a spoon, I was ready to set sail for Mosquito Lagoon. Bluff was the game that we played every night, and in it Charles Douglas, he took great delight. He won my tobacco while others cracked jokes. Says he, you'll get more while you're pounding live oak. Pounding live oak is nothing like fun, especially the dry ones will make the sweat run. It will make your axes glitter and smoke. You'll need iron handles to pound this live oak. Instead of the woods on a ladder I went, I thought it much better to my poor heart's content. All day with a pole in my hand I would poke, till I wished that the devil had all the live oaks. It's mosquitoes by day and ninjas by night. The sandflies and beagles, they bother me quite. And if I ever at home my head I do poke, to hell I'll kick Swift and his cursed live oak.
So we're at the end of our second day of measuring and tallying up all these live oak flitches. It just takes a long time. I mean, it's real guesswork really, but you know, I've got the shapes of the frames in my head. You can't really bring patterns, you'd have to make a pattern for each frame, because I mean every futtock's different. There's 88 frames on each frame. There's at least 3 futtocks, so you're looking at 240 odd futtocks at least, each one different shape and size, so it's really not practical to bring patterns down for them all. So there's a lot of guesswork involved. At some point I'm going to have to make a call about whether we've got enough or not, and the board feet are racking up of course, and the cost, but the last thing I want is to get this up to Washington and then find out I haven't got enough.
25-foot bandsaw. It's the only blade I found that'll reliably cut live oak. This blade is a regular carbon steel blade. When you try to cut live oak with this, the tips will actually round over. This is a $50 blade, this is $250.
Yeah.
But this blade, see, it's got the carbide tips made onto it.
Yeah.
And then this is called a triple chip design. And then the next tooth has got the carbide, but it's actually made with a flattened triangle, a chisel, flattened triangle, cutting tooth, scoring tooth, cutting tooth, scoring tooth, eats the craft up. See what I'm doing here? This is a forklift mast.
Yeah.
There's a forklift.
Yeah.
There's 2 forklifts, and then back there on the back is, so there's parts of 5 forklifts, 9 semi-trailers, old sawmill parts, military Hobart welder, parking lot sweeper, fertilizer spreader, and God knows what else.
So I've just been driving around the local area around the mill, coming across a lot of live oak trees by the side of the road, and this is a particularly impressive avenue. You know, not just here but all over the place. You drive around and you just find them, you know, a lot of saplings and young and middle-aged trees, as well as the more mature ones. And the Cross Sawmill, which I think is the only place milling live oak, is a really fairly small operation, which I think often deals with trees that have come down naturally or been cleared. And it does seem like there's a lot of live oaks growing here, So that's good. I would hate to be contributing to the decline of any species of tree, but live oaks seem to be doing pretty well down here. This is Robert, and Robert lives nearby to where we're milling the live oak, and he's a retired professor, and he lives on this piece of land with a lot of live oak trees, and he's been kind enough to show us around a little bit.
This tree was planted by my daddy 50 years ago. Well on its way to being a 200-year-old tree.
Yeah. Will you have a rough idea of how many live oaks would be on this piece of property?
So maybe 100 acres of woods.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at least 1,000.
Yeah.
And many of them bigger than this. You almost can't cut this.
You can take a 6-inch thick slab of this live oak and try to split it up to use in the stove for firewood, and you would beat yourself to death trying to split it.
9 foot, about 20 inches here, only 10 inches here, 10 inches down there, 9 foot by 15 inches, 28 board feet. That means this flitch will cost me about $170.
We had just taken the solid simulated futtock and we drove up with the forklift. We've got this other simulated futtock with a lot of internal defects, which we wouldn't actually put on the boat. We're trying to see if we can break it. Extreme grain strength.
You can see that some of the flitches are really quite swept, but you can see that other ones are really quite straight. Even the straight ones are going to be pretty usable because, as I've been learning, and really the reason I chose live oak in the first place is amazing grain strength that it has, and that's far, far higher than that of regular deciduous white oak. So, for instance, in a piece like this, you could almost cut a futtock for a frame any way you want out of this, and the grain is so strong, even if you're cutting 45 degrees or more to the grain, so you've got a lot of run out, it's got huge strength and it's very, very hard to split it. What that means is that I'm hopefully going to be able to use all these pieces even if they haven't got a lot of sweep in them. Of course, I'm going to make sure I use any sweep there is to my best advantage. I do have straighter frames, which I'm going to be using the straighter flitches for.
The center of a ship in a boat curves up like this. The rear, and particularly the front, goes up like this and simultaneously goes like that. As the planks come up to meet this curve and this curve, your futtocks have to be cut in a long spiral, and that long spiral is called a rolling bevel. So we've got an assembly here we call the Georgia ship saw, and it's my interpretation of how to cut rolling bevels. This is a Milwaukee 15-ounce super sawzall. This is a part store, a mini blower that we use to blow the line where we can see. Then the Milwaukee sawzall, it is mounted on this gearbox, which we have geared in to where we can tell what degrees we're turning this blade.
I don't think that's going anywhere, is it?
If there is a grain, that's going to at least 45 degrees right there.
Yeah.
sort of like a jigsaw on steroids, and I really do think it would be a positive benefit. So I wanted to throw the saw in as part of the deal.
Thanks so much.
I hope it helps you out. I believe it will.
Alright, so I've been here a few days now and I think we've got enough timber. We've got over 150 flitches now. I'm more or less certain that we've got enough to do all of Tally Ho's frames. It's better to have some left over than not enough, because the transport cost to get all this stuff from here up to Washington is going to be about $8,000, and don't want to find I've not quite got enough and have to get some more up. Got about 3,500 board feet of usable timber in the flitches. I'm not sure exactly how much weight that's going to be, because obviously there's a lot of timber which hasn't been graded or tallied up, a lot of unusable stuff around the edges and with shakes and defects and stuff. Probably looking at around 30,000 pounds of timber. That's about 15 tons. That's just a guess. Really mind-boggling amount actually if you look at the stacks and think that it's all going into one boat. But there's a huge wastage unfortunately on cutting frames out. If I have whole flitches left over, which hopefully I will, then I might be able to sell them on or use them in other parts of Tally Ho. All in all, I'm very happy, and Steve's done me a really good deal and he's been really helpful. But it is a huge amount of money. It's the most money I've ever spent on anything, actually, by quite a long way, by several times possibly. So all this timber is going to cost $20,000, plus the transport to get up to Washington is going to bring that to about $28,000 just for this one part of the hull. It's a bit painful spending that amount of money. It's a lot more than I was expecting to spend when I started the project, mainly because I was being optimistic, I think, which is probably the way I had to be, otherwise I wouldn't have taken it on. But there's no going back now. I've got to do it, and if I'm going to do it, then I've got to do it properly, and this is the right timber to do it, this is the right way to do it, and I hopefully won't be regretting spending this amount of money on it. Alright, well that's it for now folks, so thanks a lot for watching, and a massive thank you to everyone who's donated or otherwise contributed towards the Tally Ho project. It makes a really big difference and I really appreciate it, and it means I'm able to keep making these videos. And I'll see you guys next time when I'm going to be driving back to Washington State and starting work again on Tally Ho.